They will talk. They will criticize, question, and mock. They will project their insecurities, throw subtle jabs, or outright challenge your character. The world will not always meet you with grace. But in the midst of that noise, you will come to understand something sacred. Your peace does not have to be touched by any of it. You were not born to carry the weight of every opinion, every misunderstanding, every sharp word thrown your way. You were not built to internalize chaos, to absorb every ounce of negativity, to break under the pressure of someone else's storm. Somewhere along the way, you were taught to take things personally, taught to fight back, defend, explain, prove. But what if your real strength comes when you no longer feel the need to do any of that? What if freedom means being fully present in this world but emotionally unbound by it? Detachment is not about ignoring life. It's about being so rooted in your truth that nothing from the outside can pull you off center. It's not coldness, it's clarity. You stop confusing reaction with power. You stop needing to respond to every attack. You stop letting your mood swing with someone else's behavior because you know who you are, and more importantly, you've made peace with who you are. You begin to realize that not every opinion matters. Not every situation requires your energy. Not every moment deserves your emotion. And that's not weakness. That's mastery. You've learned how to step back without disconnecting, how to feel without being overwhelmed, how to see clearly without being consumed. You no longer take everything personally because you understand. It's not always about you. People carry pain they don't talk about. People lash out from wounds you can't see. People push buttons because they're afraid to face their own. And if you keep absorbing that as your own truth, you'll drown in things that were never meant for you. So you learn to pause, to breathe, to observe rather than react. You learn that silence often says more than words ever could. You realize that walking away is not surrender. It's self-respect. That protecting your peace doesn't mean you're avoiding life. It means you're finally living it with intention. And slowly the grip loosens. You stop feeling responsible for how people perceive you. You stop shrinking yourself to avoid conflict. You stop trying to convince anyone of your worth. You let go, not of love or kindness or compassion, but of attachment to outcomes, to validation, to being liked, to being right. You let go of needing people to see your heart because you've already seen it, and that's enough. When someone criticizes you now, you listen. Not to absorb, but to understand. Not to defend, but to discern. And if the words don't serve your growth, you let them go. Not with bitterness, but with grace. Because detachment isn't about shutting down. It's about not picking up what was never yours. And then you'll see it, how light life becomes when you're no longer weighed down by things beyond your control. How peaceful your mind feels when you're no longer tethered to every emotion that passes through. How free your soul becomes when you give yourself permission to be fully here, fully present, and still untouched by chaos. You can care deeply without losing yourself. You can love without becoming dependent. You can feel pain without becoming it. This is the quiet power of detachment, to walk through fire and not let the smoke claim your lungs, to hear the noise but not let it disturb your song, to stay in the world but never let the world stay in you. You don't need to win every battle. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You don't need to prove your value to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. You are not here to be emotionally available to every voice that demands your attention. You are here to walk in peace, to stand in truth, to move with intention. Let others carry the burden of their words. Let others wrestle with their own projections. You are no longer a sponge for negativity. You are no longer a mirror for misplaced frustration. You are no longer a container for anyone else's chaos. You are free. And in that freedom, you will find yourself untouchable. Not because you've become hard, but because you've become whole. You no longer need to react because your worth is not up for debate. You no longer need to chase clarity from others because you've found it within. This is your power, to feel deeply yet remain unmoved, to love fully yet not lose yourself, to give generously yet stay whole, to face the world and still belong completely to yourself. Would you like the full compiled speech now with all 3 sections combined into one seamless flow? It doesn't take strength to shout when the world doesn't go your way. It doesn't take power to argue every time someone challenges your truth. It doesn't take wisdom to try and bend the outside world to your liking. What takes strength, what takes mastery, is learning to command your inner world when the outer world refuses to cooperate. Most people are taught to manage everything but themselves. They try to fix people, adjust circumstances, manipulate outcomes, and control situations, all in the hope that peace will finally arrive once everything is in perfect order. But life never works like that. The outside world is unpredictable, uncontrollable, messy, and constantly in motion. No matter how much you prepare, it will throw storms your way. No matter how much you plan, things will shift, people will change, and not everyone will meet you with the respect or understanding you deserve. If your peace depends on that outside world staying perfect, you'll never truly be free. The path to real strength begins the moment you stop trying to control what happens outside of you and start mastering what happens inside. Mastery isn't about being perfect. It's about being aware. It's about knowing your triggers so well that you no longer give them power. It's about recognizing the moment emotion tries to hijack your peace and choosing presence instead of panic. It's about developing such a deep relationship with your inner self that no voice outside of you can pull you off course. The world will always give you opportunities to lose yourself through chaos, betrayal, disrespect, or confusion. But when you've done the inner work, you don't fold. You don't flinch. You don't need to scream to be heard. You don't need to attack to defend your value. You don't need to prove anything because you know who you are and no storm has the power to strip that from you. This kind of mastery is quiet. It's not flashy. It doesn't demand attention, but it carries a force that everyone feels. When you walk into a room with internal stability, you don't have to dominate it. Your energy speaks for itself. People sense the difference. They feel the groundedness. They notice that you don't get thrown off by tension, by challenge, by noise. And that confuses them because most people are ruled by reaction. But you've stepped beyond that. You've learned that your energy is sacred. That every time you lash out, you're giving a piece of yourself away. That every time you argue out of insecurity, you shrink your spirit. That every time you let someone else determine how you feel, you're handing over the keys to your peace. So you stopped. You drew the line. You stopped letting circumstances dictate your character. You stopped letting moods direct your mission. You stopped trying to be understood by those who were never meant to walk your path. You realized your responsibility is not to the world's approval, it's to your own alignment. And now you've built something inside that nothing outside can shake. A kind of inner quiet that remains even when the world gets loud. A clarity that stays when things get uncertain. A self-trust that keeps you grounded when others question your journey. That's what mastery looks like. Not needing to change everything around you, but changing how you respond to it, not demanding others to behave a certain way, but deciding who you become no matter what they choose. Not relying on external victories, but knowing that every time you hold your peace when you could have exploded, you've already won. This doesn't mean you don't feel. You do. You feel deeply. But you don't let your emotions drive the vehicle. You've learned to ride with them, not be led by them. You allow them to move through without letting them take control. You speak when it's necessary, not when your ego is loud. You act from truth, not impulse. Because your mission is bigger than being reactive. Your growth matters more than being right. Your calling is louder than any insult. You're here for more than temporary validation. You're here to become someone unshakable, someone powerful, not by dominating others, but by conquering yourself. And that's what you've done. You've trained for the moments where everything in you wants to lose control, but you don't. You've learned to sit with discomfort, to breathe through the tension, to listen when it's hard, to walk away when it's necessary, to stand still when the old version of you would have charged forward. Every time you choose mastery, you're telling the world, I don't need it to be perfect out there for me to be powerful in here. And once you taste that kind of strength, you won't trade it for anything. Not for validation, not for revenge, not for temporary relief. You'll guard your inner world with everything you have because you know that's where your real freedom lives. You'll become the one who stays calm in the storm, the one who doesn't flinch when tested, the one who leads without shouting, the one who knows that true power isn't in controlling others, it's in controlling yourself. Would you like me to now expand the final section, elevation, to complete the full motivational piece? There comes a point when you get tired of being pulled into battles that don't build you. You stop entertaining arguments that only drain your spirit. You lose interest in proving points to people who aren't even trying to understand. And something inside you shifts, not out of defeat, but out of growth. You begin to rise. Not rise in volume, not rise in pride, not rise to strike back, but rise in silence. In grace, in emotional strength, you begin to elevate, not above people, but above patterns, above pettiness, above the habits that once kept you stuck in cycles of reactivity and regret. The person you used to be would have clapped back, would have defended every accusation, would have carried that insult in your chest for days, but now you let it go. Not because it didn't hurt, but because your healing matters more. Because peace now is more valuable than being right. Because protecting your energy has become more sacred than winning an argument you never needed to be in. This is what emotional maturity looks like. It's not about always feeling positive. It's not about pretending to be unaffected. It's about being completely aware of the chaos outside of you and choosing not to let it dictate the calm inside of you. It's understanding that someone else's behavior is a reflection of their inner state, not a measure of your worth. So you rise, not because you're better than anyone else, but because you've decided you're no longer willing to stay at the level where you keep bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. You rise because you've seen what it costs to live reactive, to be easily moved, to hand over your peace every time life doesn't play by your rules. You rise because now you understand the deeper truth. Peace isn't found in control, it's found in surrender. And that doesn't mean giving up. It means giving up the illusion that you need to fix everything outside of you in order to be okay inside. It means realizing that you can't stop people from misunderstanding you, but you can stop letting that misunderstanding own your mind. This rising, this elevation, is subtle but unstoppable. It's the moment you choose not to engage, the moment you take a breath instead of snapping back, the moment you smile and walk away, not in weakness, but in wisdom. You start to realize that not everything deserves your reaction, not every situation needs your presence, not every word deserves your energy. And slowly you begin to feel free, light, untouched, not numb, but no longer held hostage by your need to react. You see things for what they are. You see people as they are. And you no longer try to make what's broken work for your soul. You start investing that energy inward, into growth, into peace, into becoming the person who can walk into chaos and remain unmoved, into becoming someone who listens more and reacts less. Someone who doesn't take things personally because they know what's said about them in shadows means nothing in the presence of truth. You evolve, you elevate, and in doing so, you confuse the world because people expect loudness, retaliation, fire, but you give them something stronger, stillness. You show them what it looks like to rise above without needing to push anyone down, to stand tall without making noise, to lead not from dominance, but from presence. Now, you don't chase peace, it follows you. You don't beg for clarity, you carry it. You don't wait for calm, you bring it wherever you go. That's the beauty of rising. It makes you magnetic, not because you seek attention, but because people can feel the strength of someone who no longer needs to be seen to feel secure. And as you continue to rise, you begin to see that your old self wasn't wrong. It was simply unhealed. It was doing the best it could with the tools it had. But now, with awareness, with self-respect, with emotional maturity, you've chosen a different path, one that leads you out of the chaos and into control, not of the world, but of your inner world. This is the quiet transformation no one sees coming, the one that happens in the dark, in the silent decisions, in the lonely moments when you choose healing over habit, growth over reaction, grace over ego. And that version of you, the one that rises, will never go back. Because once you've experienced peace, anything that disrupts it feels too expensive. Once you've tasted clarity, confusion becomes unacceptable. Once you've felt the strength of self-awareness, emotional volatility feels like chains you no longer wear. You are rising, not to impress, not to perform, but to become who you were always meant to be, anchored, aware, free, and nothing, no one, no storm will pull you back down. Would you like me to now compile all 4 sections into one seamless long-form speech for publishing, posting, or narration?